to the resumed debate on the protection on cultural property in the event of armed conflict, the Hague Convention Bill 2016 and the Shannon, and I call on Deputy Dara O'Brien to resume the debate.
Yeah, Guramaga Alaska Hirlock. Alaska Hirlock, Fianna Fáil supports the package of this bill and we welcome it. The purpose of the protection of cultural property in the event of an armed conflict Hague Convention Bill 2016 is to enable the state to ratify the Convention for the protection of cultural property in the event of an armed conflict. It is anticipated that this bill will not result in any additional costs to the Exchequer. The Convention, which has been ratified so far by only 69 countries, came about as a result of the massive destruction of cultural heritage during World War II, and is the first international treaty with a worldwide vocation focusing exclusively on the protection of cultural heritage in the event of armed conflict. If the bill is passed, it will fulfil the state's obligation under the 1954 Hague Convention and the 1999 Protocol to suppress, prosecute and penalise damage to cultural property during armed conflict. The bill provides, as the Minister outlined the other day, for offences to protect cultural property in the event of armed conflict, including exporting or removing, attacking, stealing, pillaging, appropriating, vandalising or extensively destroying cultural property. Penalties for committing offences under the bill, with the harsher penalties for extensively destroying or appropriating cultural property, or for attacking or using in support of military action cultural property that is under enhanced protection. Criminal responsibility for commanders or superiors for offences against cultural property committed by persons under their command, authority and control. Cultural property is an important part of a state and a citizen's identity, history and culture. However, it has been a primary target of war, used as a tactic that destroys the fabric of society and causes significant harm on a physical, social and emotional level. The targeting, destruction and plunder of cultural property during armed conflict, either as incidental to the exigencies of war or as a deliberate act in and of itself, need to be legislated for. While Ireland is a neutral country, we're neutral militarily, but we're not morally neutral, and it is important that the necessary legislation is in place to prevent the destruction of cultural property that is not only of value to Ireland, but to the international community as a whole. Our ratification of this convention underscores our commitment to protecting cultural property worldwide and our abhorrence of its destruction. The recent wars in Iraq, Syria, Yemen and indeed Afghanistan and the appalling destruction demonstrates the need for such legislation and also highlights that, that current legislation may not actually be adequate given the recent destruction of properties in this area. We've seen it acutely in Palmyra and other areas in the Middle East. Unfortunately, to date, there have been little enforcement of this convention and at times a complete lack of regard for international law. Nevertheless, international law is necessary because without it, the brutality and savagery of war is boundless. While this bill is welcome, we must work collectively with the EU and at an international level to ensure that the legislation in relation to cultural property is suitably robust and can be actively and authoritatively enforced. That is why Fianna Fáil supports this bill. Alas, Ceann Comhairle.